The man bleeding on the marble floor was the billionaire hotel owner, stabbed in his own penthouse, and the only person who came to his rescue wasn't security, wasn't family, but a hotel cleaner no one ever noticed. She was mopping the hallway when she heard the scream. By the time she stepped into that suite, everything changed. Blood. A shattered glass. A phone still recording. And a secret so dangerous, it could either make her rich or make her disappear. But what no one knew was that this wasn't the first time she had saved him. And this time, she wasn't just cleaning up a mess. She was cleaning up a betrayal. Stay tuned, because the twist will leave you breathless. Do well to subscribe to our channel and turn on notification bell. Thank you. The morning began with lemon-scented bleach and silence. She pushed her cart past the elevator bay, humming an old gospel tune that no one ever heard. Her gloved hands wrung the mop like muscle memory. She'd done this work 1,000 times. But today, something in the air felt off. It wasn't just the stale perfume or the overpolished marble floors. It was the stillness. The kind that creeps under your skin and waits. She paused outside the penthouse hallway, squinting toward the gold-framed surveillance camera. It blinked red. Then stopped. A bad sign. But she kept mopping anyway. She was invisible here. No one greeted her. No one remembered her name. But she remembered theirs. Room 1203, Infidelity. 908, Gambling Debts. Penthouse 1501, Mysterious Power Games. She heard things. Sustains no one else noticed. This wasn't just a luxury hotel, it was a burial ground of secrets. She'd seen men cry behind locked doors and women bury phones inside toilet tanks. But what made her heart stir that morning wasn't the usual filth, it was the eerie neatness. The floor too clean. The air too quiet. And the sudden chill that whispered, "Today, the dirt fights back." She bent over to wring the mop again, the plastic bucket sloshing beside her foot. A faint rustling sound drifted from above. Maybe a curtain flapping, maybe not. Her eyes moved to the ceiling vents, nothing. Then to the fire alarm, still. She stood, back aching, and rolled her cart forward, humming louder to silence the voice in her head that said, "Leave now." But she didn't. She never did. Something always pulled her to the edge. Curiosity, maybe. Or survival. Because people like her didn't have luxuries. They had instincts. And hers were telling her something was very, very wrong. Behind her, the elevator doors opened, but no one stepped out. Just a soft ding, like a ghost announcing its arrival. She turned and saw nothing but her own reflection in the polished steel. Her apron was stained from a spilled cocktail the night before, her eyes sunken from too many 4 a.m. shifts. Still, she looked younger than her regrets. She touched her neck, where the skin still bore an old scar. Faint but permanent. A reminder from another life. A warning. She turned back to her cart, grabbed the dustpan, and swept something strange from under the hallway lamp, a single cufflink. Gold. Engraved. Still warm. She held it in her palm as if weighing a sin. No guest ever dropped something so personal, not up here. And this one had a drop of red at its edge. Not lipstick. Not wine. Something thicker. She bent closer to the wall beside the lamp. A small smear, wiped hastily. Barely visible. But she saw it. She saw everything others ignored. That's what being a cleaner taught her. Truth always left stains, and lies always dripped. Her spine straightened. She placed the cufflink in her apron pocket. Then came the sound that split her bones, a scream. A man's scream. Raw. Ragged. Muffled. And close. She dropped the dustpan. It didn't echo, it stopped. Like someone had slapped a hand over a dying mouth. She stood frozen, breath tangled in her throat, eyes locked on the penthouse door just a few meters ahead. 1501, the Do Not Disturb sign dangled sideways. A thin trail of water from her mop curved in its direction, as if it too knew where this day was headed. Her legs moved without permission. Slow. Careful. A cleaner's steps. No one ever noticed cleaners until something went wrong. Today, something had gone terribly wrong. And she was the only one who heard it. She reached the penthouse door. It was slightly ajar, unusual. Always locked. Always guarded. She touched the brass handle with her gloved fingers. Sticky. She pushed it open an inch. Then another. Until the silence inside poured out like gas from a leaking pipe. The air was heavier. Smelled faintly of iron. The chandelier light inside was flickering. She stepped in, 1 foot at a time. The suite yawned open, marble floors, velvet furniture, broken glass everywhere. But what locked her eyes was the man lying face down in a pool of blood. White shirt torn. Breathing shallow. It was him. The billionaire. The hotel owner. She didn't move toward him, not yet. Her eyes darted to the shattered glass table, the spilled bottle of whiskey, and the iPhone still recording on the floor. It faced the ceiling fan, spinning slowly, its reflection caught in the blood. The screen was cracked, but the timer was still running. 11 minutes. She crouched, carefully avoiding the blood trail, and picked it up. It wasn't his phone. It had no case. No passcode. But what it recorded made her heart drop. She saw a shadow. A hand. A blade. And a face she never expected. She pressed pause. Trembling. The recording ended just before the scream. She turned to him now. He was still alive, eyes fluttering, lips twitching like trying to form words that would not come. His right hand moved slightly toward the side table. There was no panic button there. Just a framed photo of a woman and a child. She looked nothing like him. But she looked like someone he'd die for. Blood oozed slowly across the marble, reaching her shoes. She backed up, knees trembling, and leaned against the wall. Her fingers touched the scar on her neck again. Because suddenly, it all came rushing back. She'd saved him once before. But that time, it wasn't in this hotel. It was in another place. Another country. Another betrayal. She had crossed oceans, changed names, and scrubbed her way into a quiet life just to forget it. And now, the man whose life she once protected lay bleeding at her feet again. Was it fate? Karma? Or a trap finally sprung? She looked down at her mop. At the blood now mixing with her bleach. And she knew, with terrifying clarity, this time, she wasn't here to clean a mess. This time, she was the only witness to a murder in progress. And maybe the next target. She stepped fully into the room, each footstep echoing like a countdown. Behind her, the door slowly closed, the latch catching with a soft metallic click. She was alone with him now. Alone with the blood. Alone with the truth. The billionaire lay motionless, a crimson halo spreading around his head, his breathing shallow and broken. Her eyes swept the space, not just looking, calculating. A pattern was forming. The broken vase. The chair knocked over. The silence. This wasn't just a robbery. It was personal. Whoever did this had been here long enough to argue and to punish. She scanned for cameras, for evidence, for traps. But it was the blood that spoke loudest. It told a story more truthful than any security log. Drops led from the hallway to the center of the suite, then smeared violently toward the bar. There, the pattern broke. A second trail, lighter. Someone else had left. Not ran, walked. Confident. Unhurried. There were no other screams. No signs of panic. Just her, bloodstained apron, shaking hands, and the taste of danger rising in her throat like bile. She gripped the mop tighter. Then dropped it. She would need both hands. The phone was still in her pocket. She hadn't dared unlock it further. Not yet. But it buzzed suddenly, someone was calling. Unknown number. She silenced it with a trembling thumb and removed the battery in one swift motion, breath heaving. Her eyes darted to the suite's glass balcony doors. Closed. The skyline beyond glistened like it had no idea death was breathing indoors. She took off her gloves. Wiped the doorknob. Reached for the white towel on the ground. It wasn't a towel. It was part of a dress shirt, ripped clean off someone's back. Expensive. Bloodied. Not his. There was someone else here. Or had been. Very recently. She looked up at the ceiling fan again. The slow rotation. The sound it made. Like a whispering blade. Her breath synced with it as if to borrow its rhythm. She stepped closer to the billionaire. Still alive, but fading fast. She crouched beside him. His eyes opened, barely. And in that fractured moment, the past hit her like a slap. His eyes weren't pleading. They were warning. Not of pain, but of betrayal. She followed his gaze. To the corner of the room. The minibar. The wine bottle. A camera lens. Hidden inside a whiskey box, poorly tucked. She pulled it gently and revealed a small, blinking spy cam. Still recording. She reached for it, then paused. Fingerprints. She slid a napkin from the tray and carefully retrieved the device. She didn't check the footage. Not yet. Not with him still watching. He tried to speak again. His fingers twitched toward a paper under the coffee table. She followed. A printed bank transfer. $10 million. Paid hours ago. Labeled event coordination. The recipient's name. Blood. Deliberately. But she knew that font. She'd seen it once, on a letter years ago. Same font. Same template. A payout, disguised. She stood abruptly. This was no random attack. This was a scheduled event. Funded. Cleaned. And if she'd come 5 minutes later, the body would have been cold and the room scrubbed to perfection. Her presence wasn't luck. It was disruption. And someone would notice. Her hands began to shake. But her eyes remained sharp. She moved to the bathroom. Nothing strange, until she looked behind the mirror. A drop of red. Wiped, but not erased. The attacker had washed up here. She looked in the bin. A strip of latex. Disposable gloves. Used. The water hadn't drained completely. She pulled off the sink stopper and watched crimson strands float upward like ghosts. Her jaw clenched. She had one choice: walk out now and pretend she saw nothing, or follow the blood trail deeper into danger. But pretending had never saved her. Not before. Not when it came to him. She grabbed a fresh towel from the rack and returned to the main room. The billionaire's eyes were closed now, but he still breathed. Barely. She wiped the handle of the hidden room door. It looked like part of the bookshelf. But it wasn't. The door creaked open. A hidden suite. Smaller. Darker. A desk. 2 chairs. A security monitor still flashing. She stepped inside and closed the door behind her. The air was different here. Less expensive. More secretive. She approached the monitor. Live feeds. Cameras she'd never seen before. Not the public ones. Private. Ones that showed inside certain rooms. Including 1501. And room 1203. She swallowed. 1203 was the room where the owner's lawyer was staying. A man with 3 phones and no soul. She had cleaned his room the night before. He tipped her $2. Now she understood why. There were other feet. One was frozen. A woman in a red dress standing by the minibar, here, in the penthouse, holding something behind her back. The timestamp matched the scream. The image was corrupted. Face blurred. But the outline, too familiar. She didn't want to believe it. But her memory whispered the truth, it was the hotel's director of guest experience. Smiling. Polished. Cruel. She backed away. Her heel hit something on the floor. She looked down, another phone. Different from the first. Burnt at the corner. Like someone tried to destroy it and failed. She pocketed it and left the room. As she re-entered the suite, she heard footsteps, real ones, approaching from the hallway. Security. She froze, then ducked behind the velvet curtain near the balcony. 2 men entered. Suits. No name tags. One had a walkie-talkie. The other had a gun tucked beneath his jacket. They didn't rush to the billionaire. They looked around. Silent. Cold. Then one said, "Too soon." The other nodded. "She's still here." The woman didn't breathe. She watched them check the blood, the shattered glass, the recording phone still placed under the couch, the wine bottle near the sink. They were searching for her. The cleaner. She remained hidden, her heart beat louder than the footsteps echoing around the suite. The velvet curtain barely shielded her, but years of invisibility had taught her how to disappear in plain sight. The men circled the room with surgical precision, noting every object, every disturbance. One of them crouched beside the billionaire's body, checked his pulse, and whispered something into the walkie. The other moved to the phone under the couch, picked it up, studied the cracked screen. "Still warm," he muttered. She was just here. The woman behind the curtain bit her lip to keep from gasping. She'd seen men like this before, not staff, not police. These were cleaners too, but the kind who wiped lives, not stains. They didn't panic. They didn't rush. They evaluated. Contained. Buried. One of them scanned the room with trained eyes, stopping at the trail of blood she had tried not to step in. His gaze moved toward the curtain. Her toes curled. Every muscle in her leg screamed for her to run, but running made noise. Noise meant death. She breathed slowly through her nose, counted seconds between their movements. Then, blessedly, the walkie crackled, "Fire exit camera is offline." Distraction. Both men turned toward the hall. She moved. Silently. Swiftly. Across the room. Into the bathroom. Locked the door with a soft twist and climbed into the linen closet behind it. There, cloaked in terrycloth towels and darkness, she pulled out the phone from her pocket. The one she found recording on the marble. Hands trembling, she opened the gallery. The latest video was still there. 11 minutes long. She pressed play with her thumb, silencing the audio to prevent detection. And as the images unfolded, her world began to fracture again. The video started with laughter. The billionaire was pouring wine, dressed casually, relaxed. Across from him stood a woman in red, the same silhouette she saw in the corrupted security feed. Her smile was wide, but her eyes stayed cold. She handed him a small folder. He opened it, brows furrowed. Then confusion. Then anger. He said something, silent on screen, but his gestures turned sharp. He slapped the folder down. She walked toward him slowly. Seductively. Then pulled something from behind the wine bottles, a blade. Not a kitchen knife. Sleek. Foldable. Military. The cleaner's breath caught. She watched as the billionaire stepped back and stumbled. The woman lunged. He blocked her with a wine bottle. It shattered. She caught his arm. Then he sighed. He grabbed her wrist, but she beat him. Hard. Then she whispered something in his ear, words that made his knees buckle. On screen, his face turned pale, not from blood loss, but from recognition. Then she slashed across his chest. Quick. Measured. Surgical. He fell. She stood over him, wiped the knife on his shirt, and whispered again. Her expression never changed. She turned to the phone and smiled directly into the camera. Then she walked out. Calm. Calculated. Like someone who had done this before. the video ended. The cleaner stared at the blank screen, her mouth dry, her hands frozen. This wasn't a random act. This was execution wrapped in theater. But the smile to the camera, that was the part that burned. It meant one thing: the killer knew the phone was recording. She wanted to be seen. Which meant this video was bait. Or blackmail. Or both. And now the cleaner had it. Her blood went cold. She needed to move. She couldn't trust the police. Couldn't trust security. Couldn't even trust the hotel logs. She was on her own, and someone knew it. She slid the phone back into her apron and crawled out of the closet. Every second was heavy now. One wrong move, and her body would replace the billionaires on the marble floor. She cracked open the bathroom door. The suite was dim again. Quiet. The two men were gone. Only the owner remained, barely breathing. She approached him once more. This time with urgency. She found a towel, pressed it to his side, checked his pulse. It was fading fast. He opened his eyes again. And this time, they weren't warning. They were pleading. For what? She didn't know yet. But she whispered something under her breath. Not to him. To herself. A promise. Then she stood and moved toward the minibar. Pulled a second burner phone from beneath the whiskey crate, one she planted weeks ago. She called no one. Just activated it and slipped it into the hollow vent near the curtain. If she disappeared, this phone would reveal everything. That was the rule. One truth always hidden. One escape always planted. It was something she learned in Lagos. In Cairo. In London. All the cities where the rich made messes, and the invisible paid the price. The curtain swayed again. She froze. A sound. Not footsteps. But breathing. Not hers. She turned. Someone was in the room again. She didn't move at first. She just listened. One breath, two, then silence again. Her fingers crept toward the mop handle she dropped earlier, now streaked with a dry trail of blood. Slowly, she curled her grip around it, not as a cleaner now, but as a woman holding the only weapon she had. The breathing behind her shifted. Closer. But she didn't turn. Not yet. There was a mirror to her left, tall, decorative, and clean enough to reflect lies. She adjusted her body ever so slightly, angling her gaze. And then she saw him. Not one of the men from earlier. Not hotel staff. Not police. This man was younger. Slender. Dressed like a guest, black turtleneck, polished shoes, a phone in hand. But it wasn't his outfit that unnerved her. It was his expression. Blank. Watching her like a scientist watching a lab rat solve a maze. He didn't blink. Didn't flinch. Just stared. Like he was measuring how hard she'd be to silence. She tilted the mop upward slowly. The man smirked in the mirror. Then pointed his phone at her, clicked a photo. And walked calmly toward the exit, vanishing without a word. She dropped the mop again. Her heart was pounding. Why didn't he speak? Why take her photo? Was it a warning? A mark? Her instinct screamed, he wasn't done with you. She returned to the billionaire's side. He was still alive, but fading. She had no medical training. Just instinct and urgency. She pulled the curtains wider to let in light. His lips were pale now. His eyes unfocused. But he tried to lift a hand toward the photo frame again. Same woman. Same child. She reached under it, nothing. But when she turned the frame around, something scratched against the back. She peeled back the thin cardboard. Hidden inside, a memory card, taped behind the photo. Small. Obvious only if you were looking. She slipped it into her apron. It wasn't just evidence, it was leverage. And in a world like this, leverage could mean survival. She stood up. Time was running out. She couldn't carry him. Couldn't call for help. Not yet. So she moved toward the hallway, peeked outside. Empty again. But this time, she didn't step out. Instead, she turned left, toward the janitor's closet. Inside was the one thing no killer ever searched for, the staff passage. A maze of backdoor routes used for laundry, trash, and secrets. She swiped her cleaner's keycard, opened the panel, and slipped inside. The walls were narrow, dimly lit, filled with the low hum of distant machinery. She didn't run. She walked fast, quiet, thinking. Her mind raced, the burner phone in the vent, the video on the cracked iPhone, the memory card in her apron, and now, the photo taken of her by the man with no name. She needed a plan. She needed time. But above all, she needed to stay invisible. And invisibility was her only superpower. She exited 3 floors below, back into the guest corridor. There, she blended again. Rode her car down the hall, nodding to no one. Her back ached, her knees stiff, but her eyes stayed alert. Outside, through the wide lobby windows, the sun was slipping low. Soon, the hotel would glow with evening cocktails and piano music. But upstairs, in the penthouse, a billionaire bled into his floor. And someone, many someones, were working hard to erase that story before nightfall. She passed a security camera. Blinked once at it. Then looked down, as always. A cleaner. Just passing by. But deep inside her, old instinct stirred. Memories of a nightclub raid in Alexandria. A missing diplomat in Nairobi. A staged suicide in Dubai. She hadn't always been a cleaner. She hadn't always mopped floors and wiped mirrors. There was a time she had a badge, of a kind. Not police. Not military. Something murkier. She had walked away from that life after someone she loved was taken from her. After a betrayal she never healed from. But fate, cruel and cunning, had looped her back into violence. And this time, she wasn't walking away without answers. She reached the employee locker room and opened hers. Inside, old sneakers, a faded hoodie, and a zippered pouch. She removed her gloves, changed into the hoodie, pulled her hair into a bun. The apron came off last. It dropped to the floor with the weight of evidence stitched into its seams. Then she sat, opened the burner phone's camera, and played back the corrupted security footage she transferred earlier. Frame by frame, she enhanced it. Paused. Zoomed. The woman in red was clearer now. And on her wrist, a bracelet. Custom. Gold. Engraved. With a name, Livia. Her full name was Livia Adeniran. The hotel's director of guest experience. And, according to records, the billionaire's fiancée. The name Livia Adeniran paused on the screen like a slow-moving siren. The cleaner stared at it, heart thudding with realization. Of all the guests, of all the staff, her. The one who gave flawless tours to VIPs, who laughed with celebrities in the lobby, who offered her, a cleaner, a tight smile without ever seeing her eyes. Livia had always floated just above the dirt. Untouchable. Unreachable. But now, the cleaner saw her differently. As someone who knew exactly where the dirt lived, and how to bury it. The footage didn't lie. That bracelet was no accident. It was a signature. She exhaled slowly, stood, and slipped the burner phone into her pouch. Her eyes darted toward the locker room mirror. She barely recognized herself, hoodie drawn, face pale, hairpin like a fugitive. And yet, under it all, a dangerous calm was growing. The kind of calm she hadn't felt in years. It was the calm before retaliation. The calm that comes when you know something everyone else doesn't. And what she now knew was enough to shatter a multimillion-dollar empire. But with that knowledge came something else, the whisper of a deal. A shadow of a choice. Truth or power. She returned to the service hallway, this time walking slowly. Like a ghost retracing her past. Her feet led her downward, toward the laundry chutes, the boiler room, the pipes that ran like veins through the hotel's foundation. This was the underbelly, the place where secrets leaked, where cameras didn't reach. She paused at the junction where she once found a drunk guest passed out, naked, under flickering lights. And on the wall beside her, etched faintly into the steel, were initials. Hers and someone else's. From the time before she vanished into this job. That other name. That other life. Back then, she'd worked in hotels for intelligence, not for wages. Her cleaning cart held more than bleach. Her eyes saw more than dirt. And the billionaire? He hadn't known who she was then. Not really. Just a stranger who saved him from an assassination attempt overseas. She remembered that night vividly, the fire alarm, the collapsing chandelier, the poison in his drink. She'd seen the signs, made the switch, pulled him from the inferno. He never knew her name. But she knew his. Knew that people who rose that high had enemies who never forgave. And now, it was happening again. She reached the control panel near the laundry chute, swiped her keycard, and accessed the system's internal alerts. No one had flagged the penthouse incident yet. No emergency code. No ambulance. Just a silent note marked, "Incident under internal review." She stared at those words, her blood going cold. It meant the hotel was handling this privately. No police. No press. No evidence. Just like they always did when rich blood hit the carpet. She locked the panel and leaned against the wall, the weight of what she held pressing down on her, photos, footage, the billionaire's dying whispers. She had enough to end them. But ending them wouldn't bring back her sister. Her breath hitched. That was the real reason she took this job. Not survival. Not redemption. Revenge. Her sister had worked at another hotel in the same chain. Had died under mysterious circumstances. Official story, overdose. Real story. Buried. Denied. Forgotten. But in one of her sister's final voicemails, she'd mentioned Livia. Said something was wrong. That she'd found something. That she was scared. The next day, her body was found in the hotel pool, eyes wide open. And Livia. Promoted. Transferred. Praised. Until she floated her way here, to this building. This penthouse. This crime. The cleaner had buried her grief in rubber gloves and bucket water. But not anymore. Now, she had evidence. Now, the trail had twisted. The billionaire, though guilty of many things, wasn't her target. Livia was. She pulled the memory card from her pocket and tucked it into a sealed envelope, marked it with the words. Deliver to press. She had contacts, quiet ones. People who still owed her favors. It wasn't a guarantee. But it was a start. Still, something gnawed at her gut. A question that wouldn't leave, why now? Why would Livia attack him, now? Unless he found out something. Unless the billionaire wasn't the villain this time. She needed to know what had happened between them in the hours before the stabbing. What he saw. What he learned. What he paid for with blood. She retraced her steps back up the staff elevator, this time skipping the penthouse. She exited on floor 14. Livia's suite. She had cleaned it many times. Always pristine. Always controlled. She stood before the door, heart pounding. No cameras here, only shadows. She used a stolen guest key from her pouch and slid inside. The room was quiet. Luxurious. Cold. On the desk, a laptop blinked. Logged in. Unattended. She approached it with careful hands, wiping surfaces as she moved. The desktop held only one folder, guest requests. But inside, dozens of subfolders, all encrypted. Except one. Labeled, contract. She opened it. Inside, a single PDF. It was a non-disclosure agreement, between the billionaire and a private contractor. The contractor's name. Livia Edeneron. And under the signature line, a clause authorizing little discretion in case of asset compromise. The cleaner's hands shook. This wasn't love gone sour. It was blackmail turned mercenary. And the billionaire? He had tried to cancel the agreement. She'd seen the bank transfer earlier. This was payment. To silence. Or to survive. She sat on the edge of the bed in Livia's suite, shoulders stiff, eyes locked on the glowing screen. The laptop still displayed the deadly clause. It was more than legal jargon. It was permission. A billionaire had paid his fiancée to protect him or eliminate him. And now, she tried the latter. The irony wasn't lost on the cleaner. She had scrubbed suites where sins were committed, but this wasn't sin. This was what disguised as love. She shut the laptop gently. Not out of fear. Out of pity. Because she understood now, the man bleeding upstairs had crossed the line. And Livia had erased people before. The cleaner moved through the suite, her eyes scanning the shadows, her mind drifting. Her reflection in the mirror caught her off guard. For a moment, she didn't see herself. She saw who she used to be. Not the woman in rubber soles and faded uniforms. But the one who once walked into embassies with fake IDs and microchips in her purse. Her old name wasn't on any hotel log. It lived in stories whispered across African capitals. She was the ghost who found things. Stopped things. Silenced things. Until one mission broke her, left her with a sister in a casket. That sister, Miriam, had been her anchor. Gentle. Naive. A hotel receptionist who once believed she could change the world with kindness. Until she saw too much. And the wrong people noticed. The cleaner remembered the call. The panic. The silence. The day she stood beside her sister's body in a coroner's fridge, realizing there would be no justice. Only dirt. Buried. And the dirt always looked clean when rich people wrote the story. That was when she disappeared. No more spy work. No more revenge. Just cleaning. Mopping. Scrubbing away memories until her soul felt numb. But numbness was a lie. It never lasts. Especially when the past knocks again in the form of a blood-soaked penthouse and a knife that traced old wounds. She left Livia's suite without a trace. Not even a fingerprint. Her heart beat steady now. She had a plan. But plans were fragile things in a hotel built on deception. She took the back stairs, silent, narrow, pulsing with pipe heat. The kind of place no camera ever looked. On her way down, she passed the 5th floor. Stopped. Room 503. Her own. Her sanctuary. Her prison. She unlocked it. The air smelled like cheap soap and old dreams. Her bed was still unmade. Her uniform for the next day hung on a plastic hanger, wrinkled, loyal, blind. She sat at her small desk and opened the drawer. Inside was a photo. Faded. Torn. 2 girls in matching hijabs. Smiling. Her hand trembled as she held it. She hadn't cried in years. But tonight, the ache pressed deep in her chest like a fist made of stone. Not for herself, but for what Miriam never got to become. She folded the photo carefully, slid it into her pouch beside the memory card. Her hand brushed the tiny scar on her collarbone again, the one from the first time someone tried to kill her. She traced it like a roadmap, remembering every betrayal that came after. She'd cleaned rooms of death, yes. But now, she was cleaning up history. She took out her notebook next. A battered, dog-eared thing she'd carried for a decade. In it were names. Faces. Connections. People who owed her. People who feared her. People who remembered her old name. She flipped to the page marked Contingency. At the top, a name circled twice. Ibrahim Komara. Ex-hacker. Lagos. Disgraced whistleblower. But brilliant. He once decrypted a foreign minister's burner in under an hour. And he owed her. Big. She picked up her second burner phone, the one he knew, and typed a short message, "Need extraction. Info upload imminent. Payment, one truth." Then she powered it off. Outside, the hotel's elegant lights sparkled across the city like 1,004 smiles. Guests laughed in the lounge. Waiters delivered wine. Nothing on the surface betrayed the bleeding heart of the building above them. The penthouse was still unreported. Still silenced. But silence was an illusion. Just like forgiveness. She knew the men in suits would return. She knew Livia would deny everything. That the surveillance footage might vanish. That the owner's post might stop before he could speak. But she also knew this: someone would make a mistake. And when they did, she'd be ready. She zipped her pouch, tied her sneakers, pulled the hoodie over her head, and exited room 503 for what might be the last time. As she locked the door behind her, she whispered one thing under her breath: not a prayer, not a curse. Just a promise to Miriam: they will remember your name. And as she walked down the hallway, cleaner badge tucked inside her sleeve, she no longer felt like prey. She felt like a fuse, one spark away from lighting the whole hotel on fire. The night deepened, but the alarms never sounded. No sirens. No flashing lights. No ambulances waiting outside the grand entrance. The penthouse, the scene of a near-fatal stabbing, remained absent from the hotel's emergency dispatch logs. To the ward, everything was still luxury and music and clinking glasses. Guests sipped cocktails by the fountain, unaware a billionaire bled upstairs, and the only witness was a woman no one ever noticed. The cleaner stood near the linen drop, watching a bellboy adjust his tie in a mirror. Behind him, the security guard on duty scrolled through his phone, oblivious. Or pretending to be. She didn't trust anyone now. Not even the guards. Especially not the guards. Earlier, when the two suited men had stormed the penthouse with cold eyes and colder hands, they hadn't panicked. They had arrived too fast. Moved too cleanly. They were either part of it, or prepared for it. And yet, no internal alert had gone out. No shift change. No lockdown protocol. It was as if the hotel itself had decided to smother the truth under luxury thread count and executive silence. She leaned against the wall, eyes scanning. Who else knew? Who else was hiding? Then she saw him again. The man in the black turtleneck. Standing by the vending machine at the far end of the hallway. Alone. No badge. No drink in hand. Just staring at her. Again. She froze. The eyes locked for a split second too long. He smiled, barely. Then turned, walked into the stairwell, and disappeared. But his message was clear. I see you. Her stomach turned. She didn't know who he was, but he wasn't random. He moved like someone with clearance. Confidence. Control. She pressed her back to the wall and closed her eyes for a bit. She was running out of time. This wasn't just about cleaning up blood. It was about choosing whether to disappear again or expose them all. She descended the service stairs quietly, shoes muted on rubber steps. Floor by floor, she listened for voices, movement, anything. But the building remained a beautiful tomb, dressed in silence. She emerged near the staff kitchen and passed through into the security wing. There, two guards played cards by a black and white monitor wall. She slowed her walk, feigning exhaustion, and peered at the screens. Most were stuck on looped footage from earlier shifts. Some blinked static. One screen, Penthouse 1501, was black. Disabled. Her throat dried. Someone had turned it off after the attack. She moved past them, pretending not to notice. But they noticed her. She felt it in the tension behind her neck. A cold ripple. As if she'd just walked through the center of a target. In the laundry bay, she paused. Took out the iPhone again. The one that had recorded the stabbing. It had 10% battery left. The video remained intact. She hesitated. Could she upload it now? Was the hotel's Wi-Fi safe? No. Livia would have it flagged. So would the men with radios and suits. No message was secure in this building. She needed to leave. Not forever. Just long enough to vanish, then return louder. Stronger. Sharper. She had the footage. The memory card. The NDA. That was enough for war. But not for survival. From her pouch, she pulled a thumb drive. Slid it into the hidden port inside the maintenance terminal near the garbage chute. Encrypted dump. She didn't even look at the file transfer bar. She just turned, exited, and moved toward the fire exit stairwell. She descended in quick, silent movements. Her breath controlled. Her shadow tall against the flickering emergency lights. At the bottom floor, she slipped through the staff loading dock, where no guest entered, and emerged into the cool air behind the hotel. City sounds returned, distant horns, murmured music from a passing car, a dog barking. But inside her, it was still quiet. Calculated. She melted into the night like she was never there. But someone had seen her leave. From a tinted car parked across the alley. A camera shutter clicked behind a half-lowered window. Then silence again. The cleaner moved fast through the back streets of the city. This part was instinct. Disappearing. Changing directions at odd intervals. Merging with the late-night crowd like spilled ink vanishing into water. She reached the safe house 20 minutes later, barely a room, but secure. Windowless. Walls lined with old books and a single laptop. She powered it on, inserted the memory card from the photo frame, and opened its files. What she found made her hand fly to her mouth. Surveillance. Private conversations. Audio logs. Blackmail material. Dozens of high-profile guests. Celebrities. Politicians. Secret lovers. Criminal deals. All recorded by the billionaire. This wasn't about a stabbing anymore. It was about a vault of secrets powerful enough to destroy half the city. She stared at the laptop screen, eyes scanning the folder names like they were tombstones. Some bore initials. Others used hotel room numbers. A few were marked with dates, years old. The memory card was a digital confession booth, packed with private scenes, whispered threats, and moments no one knew had been recorded. The billionaire had been building this archive in silence, capturing guests at their most vulnerable. Perhaps for protection. Perhaps for control. But now he was bleeding in his penthouse, and someone had come to silence the vault. Her hands hovered over the trackpad, unsure which folder to open first. She clicked one marked 1407 AS. A video opened. Low resolution, hidden camera angle. A senator, widely respected, famously clean, stood in the center of the suite, arguing with a younger man. Money changed hands. Then a briefcase. Then silence. No audio, just body language. But the meaning was clear. Blackmail. Her stomach twisted. She clicked another folder, 1203 BK. The same room from earlier. The billionaire's lawyer. This time, the man was alone, pacing, talking to himself. The audio kicked in halfway. If she leaks it, we're finished. Livia promised he'd stay quiet. The cleaner paused the clip. Rewound it. Livia promised he'd stay quiet. There it was. The fracture point. Livia wasn't just his fiancée. She was his enforcer. His shield. And maybe now, his executioner. But why was she so desperate to destroy the vault now? Why not months ago? Unless he had changed his mind. Maybe he decided to come clean. Or use the footage against someone powerful. Maybe that bank transfer labeled event coordination was the billionaire's last attempt to buy his own safety. She leaned back from the laptop, mind racing. This wasn't about romance or betrayal anymore. This was about data, evidence that could collapse a city's elite. She had seen powerful men fall before. She had caused it. But never like this. Never with a hotel cleaner standing at the center of a digital bomb. The question now wasn't what to do. It was how to survive doing it. Her first instinct was to go dark, to vanish, leak the files, let the fire spread. But something inside her stopped her. A voice. Miriam's voice. The one that used to say, "Don't just disappear. Make them see." This time, disappearing wasn't enough. She had to enter the one room she had never been allowed into. Not physically, but publicly. She returned to the file index and found a folder labeled Archive, Employees. She hesitated. Then opened it. There are dozens of names. Staff files. Hidden evaluations. Voice clips. Security reports never filed. Including her own. Her real name. A name she hadn't used in 8 years. The file was dated 3 months ago. Someone had been tracking her. Watching her movements. Taking notes. A secret report titled, "Former Intelligence Activity Suspected. Surveillance Recommended. No action until necessary." The final entry read, "Status, contained. Unaware." Her lungs froze. They had known who she was all along. She staggered from the desk, gripping the table for support.